We're not opening up for public comments, but it doesn't appear like there are members of the public here, so we can move on to our first discussion topic of housing with an emphasis on the missing middle.
Well, let me go ahead and.
Good.
Everyone, my name is Zareen Tasneem. I'm one of the senior planners here with the City of Littleton in the Community Development Department. I'm joining you here today. I think at your request to give you a little primer and explanation of our neighborhood housing opportunities project that we are currently undertaking. So we'll go walk through some topics to just orient ourselves to what is missing middle housing, go over a summary of our current code regulations, touch upon some of the proposed code amendments that we are proposing with this project. We can take discussion really at any point throughout the talk, and then wrap it up with some upcoming engagement opportunities on this topic. So what is missing middle housing? Depending on how familiar you are with this topic, you might have seen this very classic image that is now associated with this topic of what is called transect. It goes from the single family detached house up to basically apartment buildings. Traditionally, it's thought of as that housing type in the middle between the detached single-family housing product and then mid-rise apartment buildings. In the scope of this code amendment, zoning code amendment, we are approaching it as any product that does housing type product that doesn't fall into the single-family detached category and the multifamily category. And per our zoning code, we define multifamily dwelling unit as anything with 5 or more units in it. So basically in that, range of 2 to 4 units in it. So that gets to the applicable housing types, which would include accessory dwelling units or ADUs, duplexes, which have 2 units in one building structure, triplexes, quadplexes, multiplexes, and then cottagecore communities. We'll touch upon what is encompassed in these different categories a bit later. And then part of the reason it's called neighborhood housing opportunities is it's primarily focusing on what we term as our neighborhood zone districts, and falling under that term of neighborhood zone districts are the categories of acreage residential, ACR, large lot residential, LLR, multifamily residential, MFR, medium lot residential, MLR, and then small lot residential, SLR. So in terms of thinking about it for scale, acreage residential and LLR, they're meant to be more like large lot, single family residential zone districts. Medium lot residential is what that sounds like. You're getting a little smaller, and then small lot residential is slightly smaller, and then multifamily residential allows for even more density in it. And this is straight from our zoning code, just a clip of the code of what are these zone districts, what is the intention of what they should.
Is there size constraints for like each of these?
There is.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I was just curious.
Yep. There is, minimum lot area constraints. So the first type of housing product that falls under this category is ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Again, another graphic straight from our zoning code. We have currently in our code 3 types of categories: attached, detached, and contained. The idea being attached is sort of, attached to the home next to it. Contained is meant to be, it exists within the existing space of the primary structure, and then detached is something detached from the house. So this is analysis of our zoning map. It's a little hard to read, but basically this is to show under our current zoning regulations, where would our attach and contain ADUs be permitted? And it currently is permitted in all the NB zone districts, as well as the downtown and CMU zone districts. CMU encompasses our our corridor mixed zone district and our neighborhood commercial zone district. So that's primarily the areas in pink that you are seeing. That's located around our corridors, primarily around the corridors of Broadway, Littleton Boulevard, and then Santa Fe. Downtown zone districts are the ones that are located more around downtown. And then everything in yellow is really more our MB or neighborhood zone districts. It's a little more understanding of the color coding.
Yeah, so because if I look at the legend, I don't actually see NB as one of the things on the legend.
No, so NB is the as I was mentioning before, the overarching term that the ACR, the LLR, MLR.
What,
Yeah.
use words for each one of those, please.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning before, so the MB that I'm referring to are all these zone districts that fall under it. So the acres residential, the large lot residential, the multifamily residential.
NB just means it's like neighborhood.
Yeah, that's just like the overarching term for all these zone districts that kind of end in R. Similar to how DT is representing the overarching term for all the zone districts that fall under like the downtown zone district. So downtown neighborhood residential or downtown mixed use fall under the DT zone districts. And then the CMU is the overarching term for what encompasses the CM and the NC zone district. So just trying to keep less words on the page, really.
I have asked 3 times to get like a list of acronyms in the zoning map, and I've not gotten one yet.
Okay, yeah, it's right in our zoning code. We can definitely email it to you.
That would be, because I'm looking at the zoning map now, and it's still very challenging for me to navigate. So go to the next one. So which ones with your cursor, that's the ones that are currently allowing ADUs?
So so kind of going back, as I mentioned, there's 3 types in our current regulations as it stands today. We have 3 types of ADUs, which is the attached, the detached, and then the contained. So this map is showing per our regulations, you would be permitted to build the attached and contained ADUs in these zone districts.
Question, can you go back to the previous slide?
Yep.
When you have like the attached and the contained, isn't that just in theory just like an expansion of the primary home? How would you like delineate that?
Yes, so as part of our proposed amendments, we are going to propose to simplify the ADU categories basically between a detached or contained category. So your other, part of the primary structure or you're detached from it, just to simplify it because of questions like these come up. So you're either part of the primary structure or you're detached from it. And we're proposing to simplify our code to just be those 2 categories.
Okay.
So again, as our code currently stands, detached ADUs are permitted without alley restrictions in our downtown and CMU zone districts. So really, again, centered around our corridors and then downtown area. They are permitted with alley access restriction in our small lot residential and medium lot residential zone districts. And then this is an analysis of, on top of it being zoned SLR, MLR, which lots actually have alley access. So currently, if you wanted to build a detached ADU in these zone districts, you need to have alley access. So you're really kind of restricted to these areas. In planning, we often get calls about people might be interested in building a detached ADU, but because we have this alley restriction, that's sort of like a first cut and saying you can't really build that. However, as part of this code amendment, we'll also be incorporating recently passed state ADU legislation that was done in the previous legislative cycle, which is requiring ADUs be permitted on all residential zone districts. So this regulation, we will be striking as part of the proposed code amendment, the alley restricted regulation. So it would be permitted really anywhere.
Okay, so like the current standard basically means you have to have a driveway or some pathway leading up to your ADU, correct? Like it can't just be a standalone structure like on your residence or?
Current regulation it requires you to have alley access, so you can only have, like, if you don't have alley access onto your property, you
Yeah.
would not be able to do a detached ADU. You
Okay.
can still do a attached or contained ADU, just not a detached one.
Okay.
But that's gonna be in a year, none of it's gonna matter.
Correct, as part of this code amendment, we'll be striking that regulation, so really as early as next year, depending on if the code is adopted as proposed. So duplex is two separate single-family dwelling units in one building structure, and these are some sample images of what you might consider a duplex or might see around. They're currently categorized into two land use types in the Unified Land Use Code, the ULUC, that's our zoning code. It falls under the single-family attached duplex / twin home category, or single-family duplex dwelling unit twin home conversion category. As part of this, as part of this code amendment, we'll be simplifying that into just one term, duplex, just to make it easier for people to understand. So currently, it's permitted as a use by right, primarily in our CM, our quarter mix zone district, some of our downtown zone districts, and then our multifamily residential zone districts.
What does use by right mean? Is that just like grandfathered in or?
No, so that just means you could just build it without extra like public hearing processes.
Okay.
So the three types of uses in our land use table, or I guess like permissions in our land use table, you're either permitted as a use by right, you're permitted as a conditional use, or you are not permitted. If you are permitted as a conditional use, and this will come up in the next slide, that means you have to go through a conditional use permit process, which means that it involves ultimate approval through a public hearing in front of planning commission. So if you are a use by right, permitted as a use by right, you don't have to go through a public hearing process. However, you would still need to go through a site plan process per our current regulations. Per our current zoning code regulations, anything besides a single family detached home has to go through a site plan process, which is the land use application process that requires pre-application meetings, neighborhood meetings, putting together a site plan set, so just extra processes.
So there are definitely members of the council who want to expand the right by use for duplexes, pretty much the whole city.
Correct.
This will be a big discussion over the next couple of months.
Right, so in following up with what I just mentioned in the previous slide, duplexes are permitted as a conditional use in our SLR small lot residential zone district. So that means if you're wanting to do a duplex in an SLR zone property, you would have to go through that conditional use permit process, which requires approval through planning commission. So triplexes and quadplexes are either 3 or 4 separate units within one building structure. These are some sample images of what that might be. There's currently no separate land use category that covers this product, and it would fall under either the category of a single family attached dwelling or a multiplex. A multiplex, per our current code definition, it allows for up to 4 separate single-family dwelling units in one building structure, and it is meant to be designed to resemble a single-family home. Again, some character images there on the slide. If you've ever been to Cap Hill, there's a lot of old like mansions that have been converted into separate units in it. So that's sort of, if you are thinking about what a multiplex might be, that's sort of like a product that would be synonymous with that. So currently, a multiplex is permitted as a use by right in our quarter mixed zone districts, some of our downtown zone districts, and then our multifamily residential zone district. So again, sort of more focused around our corridors.
Where we don't have any mansions just waiting to be converted.
Correct.
Where do we have mansions? Do you have any mansions where you were
A
down?
lot of mansions in Littleton.
Not a lot of that.
And then
Ranch, that's about it.
lastly, the last category that sort of falls under this topic is the cottagecore community. It's meant to be a cluster of small homes around a central open space. It's currently only permitted when a parcel is adjacent to a adjacent to a property that is multifamily residential, neighborhood commercial, quarter mix, business. Sorry, there's like business center or industrial park zone district. So again, more those types of zone districts, as you might have noticed from the previous maps, are really located around or corridors, not necessarily in neighborhoods. So currently under again, these are current code regulations, that housing type can be a single family detached home, a duplex, or a multiplex. Again, intention of being sort of small homes around a little courtyard.
So where do we have do we have any of those cottages now in Littleton? Cottage core community?
We in planning have not received any applications that really meet the intent of that product. In terms of existing products, I'm not sure where in the city of Littleton we might have that type of product already existing. So this map does not account for those restrictions I was talking about, that being that it needs to be next to these certain zone districts. So this is just, you could build it in the CM, MFR, MLR, SLR zone district, but again, it needs to be next to those other more intense zone districts. So we weren't able to do that map analysis. So it's actually, this might seem like it's permitted in a lot of lots, but it's actually not.
I was like, when you say that, does that mean it has to be like on the adjoining like property line, so to speak? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the proposed goals of this code amendment project is to reduce some of the existing code barriers. For example, removing that alley access restriction for detached ADUs, removing the conditional use permit requirement for duplexes and SLR, and just permitting duplexes really across all the neighborhood zone districts. And then removing that site plan process required for duplexes, so that if you are proposing a duplex, it can just go straight to building permit application instead of going through the extra steps before that. And then also expanding the land use types as a use by right in more zone districts. As mentioned before, allowing detached ADUs in all the MB zone districts and allowing for more of the missing housing types such as duplexes and the MB zone districts. We'll also be clarifying the existing code regulations to make it easier to understand. I think I touched upon some of those categories about, making the terms more condensed so it's easier to understand which category you really fall under, and it's not like if you're a duplex, you kind of fall into two categories, and instead of just you fall into this duplex category. And then incorporating the requirements of the recently passed state legislations regarding ADUs.
I have a quick question. For the second point, when you talk about allowing it in all NB zone districts, would that override HOAs?
Yes. That's required by the state legislation.
Yeah, the state legislation.
In fact, it's like the HOA, I think, if I remember right, it's even like the HOA loses some of its authority over kind of what it looks like.
Well, this was initially voted down the first time they tried to pass it, and then it slipped through. So it'll be interesting how it plays out.
I doubt it'll come back up, but maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's just interesting because it got voted, people voted no on it. So,
Yeah, I think am I wrong? Do you remember the HOA part of the state regs, state law?
The city does not regulate HOA regulations. I'm not sure what the state.
But no, you're correct, Robert, at least from my understanding as well as it
Yeah,
overrides HOAs.
It's this incorporating the applicable requirements of the recently passed state legislation that we're really talking about, and.
I think it called out like HOAs, city and county, like all three basically, like it's a state regulation now.
So go back to the map and let's talk about where is SLR and where is NB? You mind?
Oh, the general zoning map?
Yeah.
I would need to stop sharing.
Oh, it's not on the main, it wasn't on your second slide?
No, these maps are specifically showing just the zone districts that the uses would be allowed in. It's not just our general zoning map.
Well, I think it's valuable to have a conversation around, because I think the conversation of the council is not gonna be what the recommendation is around duplexes in this small residential lot. Is that right, what it is? I'm willing to guess there's gonna be council members that are gonna say all residential lots should be open to duplexes. And so I think it would be, and I'm not that council member, but I'm confident that it will happen. So I think it would be valuable to kind of look at that and think that through. You know what I'm saying?
Question I have, it's probably better, more directed towards you, for this change in the ULUC that's gonna hopefully bring the missing middle housing. Is there an emphasis on making this rental things? Cause I know there's a lot of apartments coming to Littleton. Or is this an emphasis on building new, like, for home properties?
So what I think, so I'm not gonna answer your question very well. So, we don't have tools right now to talk about whether stuff is rental or for purchase very much. We are flexing that tool. One tool we do have is for, in my understanding, and I'm learning, right? So don't take this as the gospel.
Yeah.
I see us as just slowly growing our tools to increase A, housing, B, affordable housing, C, affordable housing that people can purchase. And so the way we can impact affordable housing people can purchase is through South Metro Housing Authority, where they usually do rental property. But we can encourage them. We don't have authority to direct them, but we have authority to encourage them to say, build purchasable property. And my understanding is we gave them that encouragement about a year ago, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. So it's not they took that suggestion to heart. But for right now, for when someone builds something, we don't have any way to make them make it for purchase versus rental. And and the only thing we have right now is the housing ordinance to make 5% of it affordable. And that's really our only tool. And now we're really using all the tools we can to increase the number of units, but whether they're affordable or whether they're rental versus, and my understanding is the biggest barrier to rental versus purchase is the liability laws around condos. Because we're not gonna build a bunch of more single family homes, no matter what.
Yeah.
We don't have that much property. We're getting some. There's some being built in the properties on Littleton and our Mineral in Santa Fe. There's gonna be some single family houses, right?
There'll be townhomes.
There won't be any detached houses down there?
No. As currently proposed. I think there might be one project that might be single family. I'm not in charge of that project, but we have one project that's approved for permits or is in kind of permitting stage, and those are townhomes. There's another project that will become online that's multifamily apartments. There's another project, and this is all toll. I'm not sure if the third project by toll is attached or detached product.
So there might be, but the majority of what's being built is attached in some way. But my understanding is we have 3,000 units planned, which is a lot, because we only have 45,000 residents. So.
Yeah, and then I just have one more slide, so oops. So we are wrapping up our code amendment. Red lines are that's a reference to our draft code amendment proposal, and then they will be open for a public review period starting on Monday, through our Encode Plus platform. That's our virtual platform that hosts the city code. And we'll have that open for about 2 weeks to then lead up to a combined study session with City Council and Planning Commission slated for October 22nd, where we will discuss this topic and get direction from City Council and Planning Commission in terms of, you know, how would they like to move forward with the code amendment proposals, which would then move into more the public hearing process to then adopt it. That's it. That's all I have for you guys tonight.
So can you show us a map of the SLR neighborhoods?
Just in general,
Yeah, the ones that, what neighborhoods are gonna be impacted by the current recommendation for, so these, my understanding of what you just said is all these neighborhoods we're recommending the duplex is a use by right.
we are proposing to allow for duplexes in all the neighborhood zone districts per city council's direction.
All the neighborhood. Okay, not just these.
Correct.
I think that's a big mistake, personally. I think we're already going through a correction in the real estate market. It's starting to happen naturally. And I've seen cases where a lot of homes were built, a lot of duplexes very quickly, and it had a very negative effect on the surrounding area. And I've talked to inspectors in those areas who are like, this is going to be a ghost town 10, 20 years from now because we're building too fast and things aren't being built correctly. I also think a
Well,
huge.
But there's a difference between quality and quantity. So which one are you talking about?
I think too much the emphasis on quantity causes a lack in quality.
So the state demographer is telling us that every person that moves into Colorado can get a job. Like the limit to Colorado's growth is housing.
I think it's also limited. I think the reason people move to Colorado is partly for space. It's definitely a huge part of the reason why people move from Denver to Littleton. They want more space. I don't know very many people that I talk to, I'm a real estate agent, that are coming from Denver and moving to Littleton and being like, I want a townhome in Littleton. They'll go somewhere else. So I think for Colorado and Littleton in particular, I think that is a mistake. And we're also seeing a shift in how many people are coming to Colorado, whether we have the jobs for them.
Well, but the demographer says the shift is because we don't have housing.
I think it's because it's unaffordable, but I think the real estate market is starting to correct itself
Well,
without that.
what do you think is the source of why it's unaffordable?
A big part of it was because of rates were decreased dramatically in 2020, 2019 even. And so many people bought homes and bought properties. A ton of investors came into the market. And people are holding on to their houses because they're locked into a 2% something rate. They're not moving for a 6% rate.
Do you think there's places for them to go?
Yeah, I do. I think it's limited because people aren't moving. But there's a shift, and also the boomer generation. There's a lot of the boomer generation that is passing away, and those homes are starting to come on the market, and that's a huge generation. It's going to take time, but like it's starting to happen. So if we pop up all these homes while all of these homes are also becoming available, I can't tell you how many estate sale purchases I've had just this year. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I
So,
think like thinking of that population.
I mean, we're being told the main problem is that we're, as a nation, 10 to 20 million houses behind as a nation. And, you know, the irony of this whole thing is that I mean, the main purpose of zoning laws is to maintain the value of houses. Right, that's the main purpose of zoning. But the housing crisis is encouraging us to not do that. Because, you know, everybody tells me housing is too expensive, including the boomers.
I mean, I agree. I agree, but I do think it's starting to regulate itself, and I also think, you know, in the past, people built out away from the city. They didn't build on top of the city in Colorado. That's why we have like Broomfield and
Well, we have Highlands Ranch.
Highlands Ranch, exactly, and Parker, and like they're exploding. So I think like
But we're,
this idea that you just pop on top of each other, you do lose value and you can lose it significantly long-term. And I think it decreases.
I mean, Inglewood is building up, right? They're increasing their density. Are the values houses in Inglewood going up or down?
They're going up. But it's a little different than Littleton still.
Right, it is, but we're the next round of close-in suburbs. I mean,
Yeah, but the types of suburbs is very, very different.
yeah, not,
And I think that's where you have to be super careful. Like the neighborhood I live in, some duplexes definitely make sense. But there's other neighborhoods that the value in people moving there with their family is the space, is the,
I mean, I live in Aberdeen Village. I have a third of an acre lot.
Yeah.
So I can't throw any stones.
yeah. I would just be super careful. I mean, Austin, they were building, and now it's like, oh, wait. We're not increasing our population as much as we predicted. And there's all this construction in all these neighborhoods that are suffering because there's incomplete projects, or the entire vibe is a terrible word, but like, been like these huge.
You're in the youth committee.
Is that?
Before we progress, I want to establish I am not a boomer. I am 1 year younger than a boomer.
You're what?
First year of Gen X, so. No, but I appreciate you, because this is the conversation we gotta have as a council. And you, quite frankly, are the youngest voice that's, well, Gretchen, I mean, the youths are the ones that can't afford the houses. Everybody on council, I'm pretty confident, owns their house.
Well, and trust me,
Especially rent.
I would like
She just bought.
houses to be more
You
affordable.
just kind of condo.
Congratulate her.
Yeah, sorry, I asked you a question that's talk.
Oh, no, you didn't. I too would love for houses to be more affordable. I just haven't seen government involvement result. I think there's a lot of natural things that happen in a market where it does self-regulate and it takes time. There's this period of suffering to a certain extent, which is unfortunate, but I do think you kind of have to ride the wave a little bit to get.
Well, but by definition, zoning is government involvement in wealth management.
Well, I know, but I would be careful how far you go with
I
that.
would agree, cause like I have a lot of friends that live down by like Roxborough State Park, and it's like several of them bought homes and like half their neighborhood's completely empty, cause developers built up, they thought they're gonna sell them all for 600, 650, and then they realized, wait, no one wants to go that far out from Metro Denver. They wanna stay in Highlands Ranch or Parker or Littleton, and obviously we're a different scenario, but I think making sure there's not overbuilding and just having empty homes.
Well, I mean, I feel like the vibe to what you were saying is what is the character and nature of Littleton? And what do we want the character and nature of Littleton? What will it be in the future? And I think that is really an important question. And I pushed a little bit, like we are becoming an inner ring suburb, whether we like it or not. What is the nature of commuting in the future? Like where, all those things are questions that we're gonna struggle with. I feel pretty confident that we're gonna overbuild apartments in the Denver metro area. And I think it'll be valuable if some of them flip to condos.
I think and I also think they're gonna have to start converting a lot of the multi-use commercial spaces into living. Because they are so empty still.
Well,
There's a lot of like
Remaining
business
empty.
commercial spaces that are like, even on Mineral, there's quite a few, cause my company just left over there, there's 2 or 3 just vacant buildings.
Yeah, my understanding, and again, this one I don't know at all, is that there's really limits to how easy places are to convert based on kind of the HVAC and the electrical and the water and sewage inside the building. Like there's like how many, I think I read an article, it's all about kind of how close you are to a place where you can put in more of all of that within the building, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if it's really spread out, then you can't convert it.
Yeah, no, I think that is an issue. Well, and another thing, I think, you know, obviously you worry about first-time home buyers, but you also have to worry about like second-time home buyers who's are starting a family and are growing out of a current house. And you see developers are the ones who are purchasing these lots. They're building a townhome and the home next to it isn't being sold because either this home's nicer or because people don't want to be next to a multifamily or a townhome situation. So the person who owns the small first-time home next door, they're losing the opportunity to move into the next space.
Well, so my district, go put up a map. Any map. Any map. Or like the SLR map.
I'll put up our,
Give me a map. Any map.
And I also think with new builds, property values can go up in a odd way that's not fair across a neighborhood.
Sure.
And then with the assessments, a lot of people are having to move because they can't afford taxes.
That's a different issue at a county level.
Well, when we look at the rules that, the way they are now, my understanding is like 5% have to be affordable.
This is Littleton Boulevard, right?
It really isn't a lot.
yes,
And a lot of developers pay the fines because it screws their appraisal.
So this neighborhood, the kind of north end of Littleton is where all the duplexes are going in now. There's a bunch of duplexes in here. And, you know, when I've talked to people who live there and they're like, we kind of like, we wanted to have an urban feel. But it's my district where those things are happening most. And and right now, none of the architecture hangs together. It is a hot mess on that side of town. Like there's a few places where all the houses look good and then there's all these different things and then there's a few vacant lots and it's like, how do you bring any harmony to that?
And harmony is important.
Right. And so I'm leaning to, well, so how, I mean, and what's, right now, there's none. And it's like, that's the stepchild of part of the city, which is my district.
I mean, that's why people started HOAs, right? To create harmony,
Yeah, thank God I enjoy it.
so. But that's kind of the situation. I mean, I would just be very wary. I think,
Well, I
if
think,
these projects were coming in 5 years ago, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of regulation already happening, and it would be very, very easy to overbuild and also to hurt a community in the process.
well, there's more, it's, yeah, I would call it deregulation, but yeah, no, there are, that's this conversation we're gonna have. So, and for us, like our decision point really is which of the residential neighborhoods are we gonna allow duplexes in? That's gonna be the conversation. And you're saying you guys are gonna recommend all residential?
per the direction that was given by city council during the June study session.
Yeah, there was a little disagreement in council, but that's okay.
The narrow majority direction that was given by city council at the June.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There, I'm willing to guess there's gonna be some back and forth on that.
Yeah, so currently we are proposing ADUs per the state regulation and all.
Right, we don't have any, I think we don't have any we don't have any choice on that.
Yeah, and then duplexes in all neighborhood zone districts. The multiplex, so we're redefining some of our terms to be multiplex will then become 3 or 4 units in a single building structure, rearrange, arrange however you want. And then single family attached is what is typically thought of as the townhome product, that it has front and back open and then, side by side. And then that in a 3 or 4 unit product would only be permitted in the MLR, SLR, MFR zone district. So we are not proposing for that to be permitted in the LLR and ACR zone districts.
Are there parking requirements for any of these?
Yes, there is parking regulations and a parking code in our land use, or in our zoning code for all types. So some just follow-ups related to some discussion points that had happened. We did have a community survey that was live from the end of August to September. We had 150 respondents on that survey, and most of the respondents are supportive of this housing product throughout the city. There are a lot of people, it was a lot of qualitative data, more like stories and vignettes of people saying they grew up in Littleton and now they cannot afford to buy any products in Littleton because it's so expensive, or because the housing available in Littleton is so big. There is nothing that's like a smaller scale product to be like a first time home, really. So, and then there's people talking about, my parents live in a block of houses that are 300 square feet and there's only like one person living in there right now because there's nothing for them to really move out to downsize within Littleton. We have also, part of the respondents have gotten people saying, I have a down payment for 20% on a $500,000 home. I was not able to find anything within Littleton to put that down payment. 20% on a $500,000 home is a lot of money, so, and they are not able to find. Another person that said they were a Lockheed Martin engineer and they could not find any home in Littleton that they could afford. So that'll be some of the quotes that we'll be providing and providing all the results from the survey as part of the study session. So there is like a desire for a product that is not a large single family home that exists within the city of Littleton currently, and that you wouldn't really be able to build right now. So I guess like from my perspective, we didn't really go around and do introductions, so I'd be curious to hear kind of what your backgrounds are and kind of what your perspectives are in terms of housing within
So I'm Robert.
I know who you are.
Council. I live in an LLR neighborhood. I live in Aberdeen Village. And I've just transitioned to being an empty nester with a 2,000 square foot house and 2 adults.
I'm Mackenzie. I grew up in Littleton. I grew up in Beaumar, and now I live right over by Stern Park. And I'm a real estate agent. And I agree there is a housing issue. I agree prices. I think it's partly a housing issue, partly a salary issue, if I'm being completely honest.
You think people are paid too little?
If you look at like graphs of salary increases
Versus the
versus
inflation and housing.
inflation, like just general inflation, not even housing prices. Yeah, salaries, in Colorado specifically, I think Denver got voted like the 4th most unaffordable place to live. And that's not just because of housing, it's because of salaries, not going up with all the inflation. But I think there's just, you have to choose your spaces on where to add housing and be very strategic about it and respect certain neighborhoods and really pay attention to the feel. And like a part of the poll I would want to know is, why did the people who moved there move there in the first place? Because you want to maintain that. So I'd be curious about that.
I'm Cody. I've been in Littleton for almost 3 years now. Actually moved here from downtown Denver. Worked downtown and wanted to get out of downtown during COVID. And I live in the Steeplechase condos / townhouses over by like Littleton Tennis and Golf Club and off of Federal Boulevard there. I think my perspective on housing is I think we definitely do need, there's probably definitely a need for some, you know, multifamily units and more of those type of townhouses slash condos, duplexes within the city, but I do agree that we need to be cautious about how we go about doing that, and I don't think just a big free-for-all of put a duplex wherever you want is the right way to move forward. I think if you look at the real estate market over the past, you know, few months, there's not what it was, and, you know, there's inventory that's sitting on the market, you know, be it because of high interest rates or whatever, but I think, you know, we should be cautious about, you know, continuing to build, and then, you know, if the market does can perform poorly, I think it could put the city in a bad spot.
I'm Andrew, let's see, I live here in downtown Littleton in an apartment, Sycamore Gardens. I work as an engineer, and I can kind of understand what you were saying, of like, I have a lot of friends who also work as engineers who are struggling to find housing in Metro Denver. Cause a lot of people want to get their first single family home, whether they're married or not, and it's like most of them are 550, 600, and a lot of people, that's kind of tough, especially with increase in student debt for young people, and just like feels like you're piling debt on top of debt. Especially when it's like, talk to my parents, like their first home was $75,000, and I was just like, well, mine's like almost 10 times that, so it feels crazy. But I do think there needs to be a lot of intentionality with the planning to make sure we don't oversaturate and have the Littleton market go bust. Cause I know a lot of people have kind of stayed in their houses and view living in Littleton as an amazing community, but also sort of like an investment for the future. And you wanna make sure that we're still providing that to them.
Well, I think that's, excuse me, part of the contradictions. I think the council, and I'm doing it, we're working to actually take 10 to 20% off of the housing values of what Gen Xers and boomers own. I'm sorry, which is a weird contradiction, because that's usually not the role of the council. But I think there is this, everything's too expensive, and we have a role, which is weird.
Yeah. The one thing that we haven't discussed here, but that has like come to mind, is like a lot of Littleton has a lot of, some of the homes that I've seen, because I'm in the process of hopefully trying to get a home, are much older, where it has really old electrical or really old or no HVAC, and figuring out like, how do you get into a home like that? Cause I have friends who moved here a decade ago and they didn't think they needed AC back then, but then now every summer it's a hot mess with them trying to figure out how to stay out of their house as long as possible. And like how to make properties like that work, because those are the ones that a lot of my friends who are first time home buyers can afford. But it's like, do you want to move in somewhere where it's like the electrical is 70 years old, there's no AC, and it's just like you kind of feel like you're starting behind the 8 ball. with
I
an uphill
love that
climb.
idea. I think that's such a good way to approach it, because we have so many first time home buyers who are looking at homes, and there are homes they can afford, there's not homes they want.
Yeah,
Or they're competing against investor.
yeah, I had that with the first home I tried to purchase. They're like, well, give 10 grand more than what I could offer, and then 10-day close, waive all inspections, all everything. I was like, I have to live in this house, I can't waive inspections if there are problems.
And there's certain neighborhoods where you can get grants as a first time home buyers, like there's certain areas,
Yeah.
not so much in Littleton.
Nothing Littleton.
But doing something like that to help first time home buyers, because another concern for me is that developers and investors come in, they buy up everything, scrape it, and it becomes more affordable or less affordable. Depending on where you are and how good of a job they do. But it's still taking first time home buyers out of the market.
And I wonder if that's something like the city or the county could team up with, like Excel for a lot of these really old homes. It's like, hey, we're gonna put new wiring and we're gonna do this to help with the efficiency.
Yeah,
Or
I think
like
that'd be
put in
cool.
air conditioning instead of having to run 30 different fans across your house.
Window units.
Yeah.
But I do think making it easier for first time home buyers to,
Yeah, I agree. For young people, Littleton's a extremely difficult market to buy in just because of where the prices are. And that the cheaper stuff is old, and you know, you buy something old, there's a chance that you're gonna have to stick 10, 20, 30,000 extra dollars in it to get it to be ready to live in and fix any defects.
Where do you live?
I live in Denver.
What do you learn about the housing market in Denver that we could learn? What do you know from your living experience that we should learn from?
I definitely live in a more dense area than Littleton.
Is that good or bad?
For me personally, that's my preference.
What do you like about it?
Walkability.
Walkability. Yeah, is there a barrier to walkability? I mean, again, back to my District 2, where I think that's where we're getting more dense than anywhere else. The other thing is we actually have the most affordable rental rates on average of any city kind of here and south. Like our rental rates are affordable compared to everybody, you know, at our level in south. And, you know, maintaining that affordable rental is part of the conversation that I think we'll have next year. But, you know, I don't think we actually, I think our neighborhoods could become more walkable. I mean, we're talking a lot about bike and ped safety, but we also don't have we don't have any, you know, little stores that you can walk to in the middle. What do you call those? What do you call a little store in New York City? You call it, it's not a store. Bodegas. We don't have any bodegas. We got a few 7-Elevens, thank you. We don't have any, you know, like, could you make our neighborhoods more walkable by putting in a few more amenities in the neighborhoods?
That would require zoning changes to allow for commercial uses within.
But I have that.
You have that ability.
Some of our survey respondents do speak to that effect, that they would like some corner stores within the neighborhood zone districts. That's outside the scope of this code amendment, but that is something for council maybe.
It might get brought up at the study session. It might.
It might be hard for us to incorporate it in this code amendment just due to timelines, but that is something for you guys to consider in the future.
I think that would make the city more walkable.
In terms of having services close by, sure. The other thing is having actually proper full ADA accessible sidewalks.
You think that's our bigger barrier?
Yeah, otherwise, you know, traditional suburban communities built post World War II, which Littleton falls under, really have more of the 3-foot rollover curbs. That's not really. The other thing I did not mention during my presentation, but you can see, so we have designations of the, sorry, I'll actually let you go first.
That's okay.
So we do have the, you know, residential zone districts, as I was mentioning. What you might also have noticed and might notice on this map is a lot of things that say /PLO. That stands for Planned Development Overlay. That means there's a planned development that applies to that area. So a lot of our, well, not a lot, but you'll notice that some of our zone districts might say something like MLR/PLO, or, you know, down here, there's a lot of, you know, just something /PLO. That means there's a planned development that applies to that area, and some of those planned development regulations only permit for single family residential in that area. So obviously, this is something we'll have to ask legal, but even if we permit for, let's say, a duplex in all the neighborhood zone districts, because if you fall under a planned development zone district and it only permits for single family residential, then you would not be able to build a duplex there just because of that planned development regulation. We do have a process where if you did want to get out of your planned development regulation and go to the underlying zoning regulation of, then it would be you could build that duplex. You would have to go through our site plan process with the extra step of you need to have that site plan approved through a planning commission public hearing. And that's specifically if you are like a single family detached home in a planned development that wants to get out of it and wants to go to the underlying. So that's a little complex, but I just wanted to preface that as well. And I'll be bringing that up during the study session.
I don't know how to follow up that. I'm Ricky. I've lived in Littleton for just over 3 years now, and what I fall into is the exact scenario that these two gentlemen were talking about, where we bought a home. I don't know if it was our favorite home, but it was a home that we could afford, and 3 years later, I'm still working on renovations. Mostly just because I've been figuring out how to do it right, and so that's been the thing that, got us into a home, was the affordability and then the willingness to tear down walls and the renovations and AC units and things like that. And so, I think there is consideration there, and I will also say too that where I live is across the street from apartments. So I'm probably the one who's a little bit on the fence here about, whether or not some of these zoning regulations, which way I kind of follow that, because I see a lot of opportunity where it allows people to have accessibility into their homes and into their first time homes. It also allows maybe older generations like boomers and beyond to move to something smaller, right? You might get to that point where it's like, well, I don't need all this space. So if you're not a boomer, but if your house goes on market, let me know.
Not.
I want everyone to know you are not.
I do too. It's really important to me.
But I think, that those things are, for consideration too, but I think probably just the overall theme is that, I just would urge, that kind of caution, right? Because I think more than anything, I would say that this group especially wants to see more people come into Littleton and start their homes and start, living their lives and staying here. But, the other thing too is that we don't want to have these, kind of like people come and, companies just take over and build. We want to be thoughtful, because that's kind of what Littleton is built on, is that thoughtfulness for community. So this is just a long way of me rambling, trying to sound intelligent after what you said. I hope that.
Do you mind, where is your house? Do you mind?
Yeah, it's it's in District 3 off of Littles Creek, near Bannock area.
I need to leave.
I was wondering that, like you said, you're gonna stay for an hour, and I was like, you made it an hour and a half.
I made 6:30, didn't we start at
6:30, you're right, sorry. Oh.
You gotta see me doing time changes when I have calls with people on the East Coast. I screw that up every time. Well, Mackenzie, is there anything else you want me to take to the study session? So you guys, this is what we're gonna be talking about. Study session, the thing about study sessions is you can't provide input. But I'm happy to have a conversation with you later, or any of you about this.
So we won't be taking public comments during the study session, but like I mentioned, we'll have the code amendments available for public review and comments starting on Monday, and that's through our website that you can, sorry, it's hard to see here.
But it feels like the fundamental question, the way it's structured right now, is which residential neighborhoods do we want to allow duplexes in? And I think right now, I understood what you said. It's allowed everywhere except for where there's a PLO, which appears to be mostly the southern part of the city and the kind of the
It
southeastern.
depends on the regulation of the PLO.
Yeah.
I don't wanna say like blanket statement,
Right.
you can only build.
And in the not in the LLR.
We are proposing.
Oh, you're proposing it in the large
The
one.
LLR and SLR. We are not proposing like a 3 or 4 unit product in the LLR and SLR or ACR.
AC.
The link that was provided at the end of the presentation, that's for this site, this hasn't been updated. It takes you to this page that shows you, what's being proposed in terms of timelines. And then you can add a comment here and then submit it.
Last chance for chocolate.
Also be far-fetched, but I know federally there's been discussion, this could just be election talk, but, of taxing undeveloped gains with houses. If that does come to fruition, nobody's gonna be buying
Well, I think
a house.
what I heard on the unrealized gains is you have to have a certain level of wealth that is beyond most of the houses in Littleton. Like you have to have
That would be the case for sure.
$25 million worth of wealth.
Okay.
So I think what I mean, the other election talk is the $25,000 first-time home buyer one. And then during the vice president's debate, I heard Waltz talk about investors buying up properties, but I didn't hear him talk about what the solution was for that. I just heard him identify that as a problem.
I was gonna,
Well, like BlackRock owns a lot of these small companies that,
Sure. Yeah.
that's what I was gonna ask or kind of inquire about. I was like, would the city ever take a stance of like limiting, how do I wanna phrase this?
Well, I don't know if we have this, I mean, I don't know if we have the authority to.
Of like certain investors.
Who can buy what.
Yeah. So I feel like that is probably gonna be an issue Littleton sees with, it's, like you said, it's the next ring of suburbs and it's very desirable. I have a lot of friends who wanna move here, just can't afford it, and I could very much see investors being like, this is a long-term investment if we're gonna own this whole neighborhood and just rent out the home. People will still come.
Yeah, I don't know if we have the authority. My assumption, which is, you know how assumptions are, is that we would need the state to give us authority to limit who can buy property, and I don't think we have that authority. But the other thing, is this home buyer grant I heard you mention is, and we don't really, we're asking for the marijuana tax increase so that we can do more homeless services. Like we're not other than museums and libraries, we're not a service oriented kind of, that's not what cities do in Colorado. And so first time homebuyer grants would be a stretch for us in terms of kind of what we do. And I think, quite frankly, the only way it would happen is if it was federal money. So.
I guess my point is, there's a lot going on even at a federal level that could affect how so much of this plays out.
Yeah, no, I think it's.
I don't know, again, just caution.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I do encourage you to so, what I think is gonna happen is we're gonna have this meeting with the planning commission and we'll come up with a plan around where we're gonna allow, where the direction we're gonna go around which neighborhoods we're gonna allow duplexes in by right. And then I think, there's gonna be opportunities for public comment after that as well. But, the sooner you get in, the better. And there is disagreement on the council. I think it's right. There was a slim majority that wanted to allow it everywhere. And I was not in that majority, but I respect my colleagues. I understand their perspective. So really nice hanging out with you guys. I have to go.
With your work.
Thank you, Robert.
Clean up a mess. See you later.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Insightful. Very helpful.
I don't think, however we could get that link, I'll make sure everyone on our council gets it for if you wanna send it to Chris or whoever.
Yeah, I'll send it to Chris actually right now.
I can make sure we forward that to all the.
Before I forget, and then, like I mentioned, it's not
Yeah,
updated to
that's
show, so
what
if
on
you go to the
Monday.
link and what you're seeing, that's old, it'll be updated, probably by the end of Monday, and it'll only be open for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, we're in quite a tight deadline in terms of doing this project, and
Are you, I
we'll need
guess,
to close
are you
it in.
compiling all the comments for the 22nd study session?
Yeah, so that product, the materials for that will actually go live before the public comment period ends, just
Okay.
because of how it operates. Like, I think your agenda and materials go live the Thursday
Yeah.
before. That's the same for, all the council meetings. So we will close it on that Monday, and then we won't necessarily quite have time to do analysis of all the comments, but we will be presenting, here's all the comments during the meeting itself, so they'll still be presented then.
Okay. Awesome. Does anyone have anything else they want to discuss on this?
We have enough time.
Well, thank you, Zerk. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I guess we can move on to our next topic, our NJV public engagement events. Because we had to kind of put in links on the Mats on Main and the second iteration. So our last meeting, we had kind of discussed what if we do
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
What if we kind of do like many events in the new year where it's like an educational experience, whether it's about what first time home purchasing looks like, or filing your taxes, or different things, just to kind of get people of our age demographic. And we talked about hosting it at the library, because there's lots of space and availability there, just sort of like little educational seminars where we can also kind of like talk to people, let them know who we are, and like gather information. And my thoughts are, if we want to do that in the new year, we're getting towards the end of this year, we probably need to start figuring out what months we want to do what, talk with Dennis about reserving library space, and then also kind of just getting the ball rolling on all those things. So I just kind of wanted to do a little brainstorming of like, what events do we want to do? It doesn't have to be the definite, like, these are all the events we're doing, but I think having like one or two that were like, hey, we want to do this, and we can start the process of planning and reserving space and doing proper marketing and things. And then with that, creating like subcommittees of people who are willing to be like, I'll work on this one, I'll work on this one, and kind of get the ball rolling on all those things. So I guess the first step would be like, what type of events do we want, or what theme of events do we want to do?
What I will say too, because I know it's like half of us weren't here last month,
Yeah.
but like when that kind of became the idea, that felt like we had really good momentum. Like, this is what this group is gonna do. All right, that fly moved over. But that's what this group is gonna do, and that felt like we actually had like good traction on it. Where it's like, let's bring, whether that's like education or a meet and greet, you know, to our people. That felt like it was the right idea. And I think the first thing, what did Kathy call it? It was she
Is that
said,
a name? I wrote it down somewhere.
yeah.
The adulting seminars.
Yeah, adulting seminars. So like that gives like context to like things that like people come up against, which like.
It's very khaki.
The way it just like rolled to is like, all right, but like, like I think like a topic like tonight, something like this, but maybe
Yeah.
done less, like more just talking to people like, hey, did you
Yeah.
know that like Littleton has all these different zones, and
Yeah.
like educating people, like that would be really cool.
I think like one that comes to mind is like for first time home purchasing.
Yeah.
Cause like I had friends who didn't even realize you're supposed to have 20% for a down payment. They had that money thankfully, but they're like, oh, I didn't realize I have to have 100 grand saved. They thought they could just buy a home because now they have good paying jobs. I was like, no, there's a little more involved, but they didn't know.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Or just like the whole process of it, from like, what do you do from the time that you make an offer to the inspection
Yeah.
to.
Plus, there's been some changes this summer with like getting a showing. You have to have a realtor now. You can't just go.
You have to have the signed contract, yeah.
Yeah. They don't do a good job of teaching you that.
Like that's a great adulting seminar.
Yeah.
Or even what's in your closing packet.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times at the title company and they drop that in front of you and hopefully you read it before, but I mean, on signing day, you don't have a lot of time and closing to read it. So if you have it before, you're kind of in a bad spot.
I think something like that would be hugely helpful, because we talk about that a lot, when we meet each month, and I think people would benefit from it. The other one that I was thinking was like hosting opportunity for like a resume review, interviewing practices, thinking about like how far our reach goes all the way down to high school students.
Yeah.
That still is impactful when early on stage.
Yeah.
Even as an adult, you can always be a little bit better, especially these days with the way the job market is, and
Yeah.
preparing for things like that. I think those are helpful too, and it's a good networking opportunity.
And I wonder if that's something local businesses, especially more for like high schoolers, would be looking for people who like kind of have a mini career or mini job fair, but also a resume review for folks.
Do we have any data on like engagement of library events with certain age groups?
What is it you wanna know specifically?
I guess, I think these are really good ideas, but my concern is, if I'm being completely honest, up until now, like, if I would never find out about a library event that was going, you know what I mean, or that someone was hosting, it's probably not something that would.
If you didn't go to the
Yeah,
library.
well, I think the
Have
goal would be to promote like
highlighted.
Littleton social
Different
media and
areas.
like use the library as our space, but not necessarily make it like, oh, this is a library thing, this is something that we're putting on. And use
Yeah.
our avenues to like promote it on social media, make sure it's in the Littleton
Okay.
report and all that, and just using more of the library as the venue.
What about doing it at Epic?
That would also work, we just have to talk with Littleton Public Schools, right?
Probably, yeah.
So,
You could also consider posting something in the Littleton Independent, we could maybe try.
yeah,
Kiln was another space opportunity.
That would be cool. And there's a new event space in downtown Littleton actually too on Curtis. Yes.
'Cause that could also be an opportunity, right, of like, get you into different parts of Littleton.
yeah.
Yeah.
To your point, you didn't know that the library hosts those.
Well, I did
So,
know, it's just
yeah.
not something I would probably be interested in
Yeah.
going to.
That's why I was like, don't feel like we're dead set on library, I'm just looking for an indoor space that we can work through.
Throughout the winter months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
What was it that you had recommended?
Kiln.
Kiln.
Kiln and Shift and, cause it could be good marketing opportunity for them if we're bringing in people of the
Yeah.
right age group.
If you think about like remote workers, right, maybe they want a space to work, there's a business.
I've been wanting to check out that kiln. It's cool.
Yeah, but trying to think about like topics that appeal, and thinking about things that we've talked about in the last couple of months, we've probably talked about this a lot, but the bike and pedestrian safety could be a
Yeah.
fun one to, in the winter months to talk about, like,
Yeah.
how do you make yourself visible at work and in school? And I think I just saw something that came through that they're doing like it's like a group bike thing or something on the 9th next week. So it's gonna be like a bus of bikers who are going to school. And I thought that was kind of a cool event. And I thought, oh yeah, like we talked to like Vibrant Littleton early on.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go talk to them again.
Yeah.
Co-hosts, sponsor those things.
Yeah, cause I know they do a lot of community rides. It's very interesting because the Littleton Public Schools actually encourages if you live within a mile of the school to walk or bike.
Yeah.
Trying to think what else.
If we do a real estate thing, we could get a title rep there and a lender there to answer questions as well.
Yeah, cause I think that's a large part of it too, is figuring out like, how does the financing work?
Financing, yeah, is a huge part of it.
Yeah,
Without the like smoke and mirrors, but just like
yeah.
straight. The first one I went to years ago was a smoke and mirrors event.
Really?
Yeah. It was at a library too.
It needs to be like a sense of discussion and question and answer
Yeah.
sort of thing, I think.
Definitely like, here's my business card, call me on the way out type of event, but if we could do something like that, I think, benefit greatly from it.
Yeah.
And then even there, like whoever shows up, we could have an opportunity for people to be like interested in, like hosting an event or whatever, or talking about something, drop it here, and then we can take that feedback from these meetings and talk like, is it something that would benefit, our NCAP, age range? Cause then that way we don't have to do the work and brainstorm, we have other people who can give us ideas.
And one of the things that was mentioned last week, I think Kathy, or last month, was the idea of like work with like the Littleton Business Chamber, like what does it take to start a business? Cause a lot of
Yeah.
people feel like they have great ideas, but they're like, this seems really daunting to.
I would love to go to that.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you do an LLC? What is legally required? And like,
Yeah, that's a lot of things that people don't think about, like,
Yeah.
setting up your LLC, if you have employees, you have payroll taxes now.
Yeah.
Just different, you have to make quarterly payments because you're not W-2 withholding anymore.
Bitch.
yeah.
Summarize it shortly.
Yeah. But with a lot of those topics, which ones do I think we should probably pick two to start and like get the ball rolling on planning and figuring out what location, what date, what time we wanna do them. Which, does anyone have a particular topic? The ones that I had written down were like real estate / first time home buyers, resume review / job fair, bike and pedestrian safety, and then like starting a business. Which, does anyone have one or two that they're like, we should start with these?
Can I add one to that?
Yeah, I was like, this is a running list.
Whenever we have like local elections or people voting on stuff. I feel like there's so much more to what you see on a ballot. And then, you know, like I pretty much wanna vote yes for everything I see on the ballot, like it.
Sounds good too.
Because it's worded so that in a certain way, so having like kind of a round table discussion where people are able to say like, I don't know, you can look up things where like, here are the pros, here are the cons.
Yeah.
Where you have someone go, here are the pros, here are the cons of this, that the community has brought up, because that's why I always have to Google is like,
Yeah.
what are both sides of this? And I think that'd be, yeah, good for people to see.
Like that. Is there any other topics people want to add?
I'm sure there are, just not at the moment.
Yeah. I was like I said, it's a running list. If you get inspired in the shower later, just send me a message and I'll add it to our. But kind of going back, what two do we want to like start with? Cause I think 2 is a good number to kind of get the ball rolling of if we want to do January, February, March, figure out when. Makes sense.
I think you'll get more people in February and March.
Okay, and it also gives us a little bit more time to plan, advertise.
End of January, maybe,
Yeah.
just based on at least the events we've hosted. November through January, people are inside.
Yeah, holidays and all sorts of.
They RSVP and then they don't come.
I would say the resume review interviewing would probably be a better springtime event.
Yeah. that
Maybe
makes
not to
sense.
April, May. Bike safety is probably similar,
Yeah.
probably taper off here in the coming months.
I think the voting one would be key, like around, really good around like September or October of next year, once the new ballots come out.
Yeah. 'Cause yeah, cause next year is a local election year.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of leaves if we wanna do real estate and what it takes to start a business. Those ones we can kind of start working on.
I feel like either of those are good February, March topics.
Still that like new year feel of like, I wanna do this year.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so people ride the coattail of the new year's. Nice.
End of January, beginning of February is when people, well, really January and February is when people are like, I need to start figuring out how to buy a home.
Yeah,
That's when our phones start.
picking up.
People aren't actively searching yet, but they're like trying to figure
like,
out
wait,
how
as an adult, I should
to,
do
yeah, what the
this.
steps are.
Okay. So would you, or what do we wanna do? I guess we could do the real estate one first, end of January, sometime February, and then starting a business in maybe March. I think with that of. I guess we don't have to necessarily decide this, but I was like that, my thought was like we have kind of subcommittees to just like to kind of work on. Each individual like event. And then like everyone else can help where it's necessary. So it's like these 2 people would be responsible for real estate, these 2 people would be responsible for the business. And if there's other connections or things people can do, they can kind of delegate tasks, but they're like the leaders for that event.
Okay.
So I was like, for the real estate one, would you or your sister like to be on that?
We can both
Okay.
do that.
Okay.
The entrepreneur one sounds way more fun.
I don't wanna work with it.
I don't wanna do both, but.
And then for the starting a business, does anyone have, I'm glad to be on it, but I don't wanna take that spot if someone else wants to be on that as well. Well, I guess there's 2 spots.
I can head that with you.
Okay. And do you have any feelings about that? I wanna make sure I don't speak over you, Cody, if you wanna be.
I'm happy to be on that or either one. It does, or I'm happy to be on one or help with both or whatever works better for the group.
Okay. We'll just, I guess, see how it starts out and then. As we have more people at meetings and or can figure out what goals for different groups need to be, we can kind of bring more folks into the fold. On that. So, okay, I feel like that kind of puts us in a good direction, cause we still, I guess it is October. Like I thought we had more time, but. We still have plenty of time, to get all that, the ball rolling on those things and figure out. Yeah. Does anyone else have any more thoughts on kind of like our events or our public engagement events or / adulting seminars? I like that name.
I like that too.
Um,
I just like the idea of doing it at a cool,
Yeah.
like a hip space,
The library.
like the.
I know you had said Epic Kiln, and I guess a question I would ask is, do we wanna do it at the same place, or do we wanna move around town with different locations for each event?
I think you could do them at the same space or different.
Yeah, I think, yeah, just on availability and whatever that subcommittee is feeling it's the right
Yeah.
for that. Cause it get, like I said, it gets people engaged in different areas of Littleton too.
Yeah,
I don't know how often people are just gonna happen in on
That
a
is
place like
true.
Kiln, right? It's gonna
Yeah.
force people to go in there, look around, it's in that area too.
Yeah. I like that.
He is getting them to see it as a marketing opportunity.
Yeah. That is the key.
Or I guess, is there a budget for those?
Um,
If we were to like rent a space?
I don't know.
in the past, when we were trying to plan an event, we were told, we're told the city doesn't have a set aside budget, but usually anything under $500, like, they can make happen. But there's not already like pre-allocated funds, so to speak.
I think that's though, I mean.
Yeah. Well, that's cause like in the past, we've talked about like, oh, we should get pizza or this or that, and I was like,
Oh, so you're saying overall budget?
yeah, overall budget,
Still, that's not.
so.
Creative Littleton is the new
Creative little,
spot.
Where's that again?
I believe it's on Curtis. It just opened. And their pricing, Monday through Thursday is $100 an hour. Friday through, and Sundays $250 and Saturdays $300 an hour.
we'll probably get like 2 hours there, and then if we wanted to get like refreshments or something.
Yeah.
I guess my only ask would be like in the interest of time, our subcommittees make sure, or at our next meeting, come generally with a date. Doesn't have to be set in stone, like date, time, location. And then kind of maybe thinking of like what your thoughts for the event are, so we can get things moving.
Okay.
And then hopefully my thoughts are, in November, we can work on getting marketing material out and like roll it out with all the holiday stuff, cause I think that people are looking in newspapers, on social media for all their deals for Christmas and things. Sweet. Is there anyone else wants to add to the topic of our public engagement events or do?
Just, this is a good option, but if we can get Kiln or Shift, I think that's a better option. If we can get them to do it for free.
Yeah.
Free is always better.
Yes. Sweet. If there's nothing else, we can move to the comments / reports. Does any city staff have anything? Do anything for us, Chris?
Not much from me. I did wanna let you guys know that the QR code for your survey's done. You got your mail, your inbox, you did specifically.
I did.
You can forward it to everyone else, but it's done. It's good to go.
Awesome.
Sweet. Yeah, that's it for me though.
Okay. And our council liaison left. And then, then for the board, the only comment I have is like, I've been communicating with the city council and they were very appreciative of the letter we wrote and sent to them for the Kroger Albertsons merger. There was some support from the city council, but not a majority were supportive. A lot more were just like, this doesn't seem like a good use of time because the lawsuits are already in place. It's not like we're pressuring the state to do anything. So I don't, from my understanding, it's not gonna be moving forward. But they did say that they were very appreciative of the work, we were putting in for that. So that's really just, I just wanted to report back on that of, they decided not to take it up, but they were appreciative of it. And just more of like, it seems like the window for that had already passed. So that's all really I have to add. And our vice chair, Jack, is not here, so I'll open up to any members have any comments or reports to make. Awesome. I will adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.